Yahara prasade bhai he bhavaturiya Yahara prasade bhai he bhavaturiya Krishna prapti ho jaha hote Krishna prapti ho jaha hote Guru mukha padama vakya ite te koriya kya padama vakya ite te koriya kya Guru mukha padama vakya ite te koriya kyo Arna kori ho mane asha Arna kori ho mane asha Guru charane ruti esa uttama bhuti Shri Guru charane ruti ese uttama bhuti Viprasade pure tarva acha Viprasade pure tarva acha Chakudana diloe jame jame prabhu se Chakudana diloe jame jame prabhu se Yidya jnana hriday prakashita Yidya jnana hriday prakashita Prema bhakti dhate vidya vinasa jate Prema bhakti dhate vidya vinasa jate Viriga jahar churita Viriga jahar churita O Sri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu Sri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Dhivana Lokanath Lokera Dhivana Prabhu Kordaya Deho More Pada Chaya Prabhu Kordaya Deho More Pada Chaya Ebe Josu Vishukri Bhuvana Ebe Josu Vishukri Bhuvana Prabhu Koradaya Deha More Parachaya Prabhu Koradaya Deha More Parachaya Prabhu Koradaya Deho More Parachaya Ebe Josu Vishukri Bhuvana Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamine Te Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashtacharishatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Advaita Gadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Shyam Sundara, Shyam Sundara Hare. Jai Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jai Krishna Balaram. Jaya Gauranita, 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 Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Gauranita, Gauranita. Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita. अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमरे श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णु परमहंस परिव्राज का आचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत गौरी वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapur Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Nuramanveti Dham ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bo Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Agarisidya Samalavati, Agarisidya Samalavati, Agarisidya Samalavati, Agarisidya Sri Sri Guru Gauranga.
Today's Sunday feast lecture will be given by Ranjit Prabhu. And now we are going to listen to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
I don't remember him saying anything about it.
Then at a certain point, Prabhupada got the stroke. That was Memorial Day weekend in '67. And anyway, after that whole affair, Prabhupada couldn't type. He was actually partially paralyzed on one side. Anyway, there was no question of how is Prabhupada going to write his books. So we had to talk all about this. It was a thing, what to do, so on. Longhand, that would be so difficult. Anyway, Gargamuni had seen, they were just starting to come out with these dictaphones, office dictaphones, and he had seen one in a store window. And he had gone in and asked about it. And he went to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, I just saw one. And Gargamuni had some money, he was doing already his business. And so Prabhupada said, yes, that is good, we bring that. So he bought it and had the man show him how to operate it and so on. And so he brought, it was his...
One ant become Krishna conscious that our whole movement is a glorious success. And then I realized it was a pure metaphor, that Prabhupada was aware of my bewilderment. It's pretty obvious. That he used it to make a point was excellent. And there I was, instructed by the invisible ant to whom I had a duty to feed and to chant, and that if I did so, it was our movement, whole movement was a success.
Saraswati, myself, and Jamuna got the whole crowd chanting, and it was. We were quite successful, but he saw Saraswati. We were there, but he saw Saraswati, and he liked that she was getting everybody to chant. So later on, he gave her a deity. Did you know that? He gave her a deity, and for her to worship, very young, 3, 4 years old, 5, not quite sure. And one day they were playing almost like transcendental dolls. The deities were there. Saraswati had become quite attached to the deities. Prabhupada took the deity and hid it behind his back. Saraswati was looking, where's my Krishna? Prabhupada said, where's Krishna? Where's your Krishna? Like that. And she became very upset, and she was crying. Where's my Krishna? He let her cry. She said, do you have him? Where is he? And he played, no. And then she cried very much. She was really crying a lot. And he said, I have him. Here he is. I just wanted to see how you would feel the separation for your Krishna.
So then came to publish Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada was so determined to publish it, but there was no money to print it ourselves. And anyway, Allen Ginsberg, who was a friend, although he wasn't a Vaishnava, wasn't a devotee, I mean, he had his own lifestyle, but he was very sympathetic. He had been to India. He liked chanting. Prabhupada instructed him, chant Hare Krishna before you do any poetry reading, and he used to do that. He gave Prabhupada first harmonium, which he had brought from India, and he would give donations, and with the immigration thing he was helping. And anyway, when the manuscript was ready for printing, we gave it to Alan, and he was very enthusiastic. He sent it to his publishers, but they rejected it. And then he sent it to some other publishers he knew. Again, everyone rejected it. And after about 6 months of trying it, he just lost interest. Everyone was rejecting it. So then Prabhupada gave the manuscript to Ray Rama, who was the editor of the Back to Godhead. And so he tried, and he was sending it around to academic publishers, and again, everyone rejected. You know, you get the little letter in the mail, thank you very much, however, this doesn't fit into our plans, and this and that and everything. So then after about 6 months, then he gave up. So then Prabhupada gave it to me to do. Anyway, by that time, I had absolutely no faith that this was, because I could see that there was no commercial value to this manuscript. I mean, every page there was Krishna consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And I was thinking, well, if you're not Krishna conscious, you're not interested in Krishna consciousness, you're not going to be interested in this commentary. There's no fancy poetry or scholarly, the footnotes and the academics, and I had read different Bhagavad Gitas, no esoteric things, and so I just had no faith. And I didn't know what to do, and I was going to bookstores and trying to see how they were doing, and then to learn how to get a book published, and I was going to the library and reading and trying to find out how to do this, but I didn't know what to do. So in the meantime, Prabhupada had recorded the record, the Hare Krishna record, which eventually the Beatles got. That interested them when they heard that record. And the record was there was a lot of interest. It was very nice. One radio station played it all night long. For 10 hours they played the record over and over again. The WBAI, one of these alternative radio stations. So we were advertising the record in different kind of underground publications. An order came for the record one day. I used to get the mail and then bring it up to Prabhupada. We'd go over it together. He would dictate and I would take notes and answer letters and so on. So one order came for a record. It was the letter was from the Macmillan Company, big publisher, worldwide. So and it was on this letterhead, Macmillan letterhead. So and so was ordering a record album with a check, and I rushed up to Prabhupada. I said, Prabhupada, look, someone is from the Macmillan Company. I mean, I didn't know what to do. We were, helpless. Prabhupada had to tell us everything. So Prabhupada said, he thought for a while, and then he said, you bring the record tomorrow, you bring it to the person, personally, and you tell that you have a Bhagavad Gita that you want to publish. And I said, well, okay, I don't know, should I bring the manuscript? No, you just tell them. And I said, well, okay, but I have to say something about you as the author. Maybe I should bring some of the other books you published, like from India, the books you have already in my Bhagavad. He said, no, just tell them that you have a Bhagavad Gita to publish. I said, okay. So the next day I went uptown, I got dressed up in shirt and tie, and went uptown to, they have a skyscraper, Macmillan Company, and the person who I was giving the record to was an accountant. Had nothing to do with really publishing. He was just adding numbers. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think, well, how am I going to tell him? What am I going to tell him? So anyway, we're talking something about the record and the mantra and so on. And I'm kind of sitting there bewildered. And then the door opens and in walks someone, and he all of a sudden, very formally, he says, well, I'd like to introduce you to this is James Wade. He's our senior editor, and this is me. So, and I just shook hands with Mr. Wade, and I just looked him right in the face. I said, I have a Bhagavad Gita to publish. He said, a Bhagavad Gita by a Swami, an Indian Swami, here in New York? He did this himself? I said, yes. He said, complete the entire Bhagavad Gita? I said, yes. And he said, well, that's exactly what I'm looking for to fill out our religion section. I got Buddhas, and we have the Quran, we have everything. We don't have a Bhagavad Gita. I need a Bhagavad Gita. Can you want us to publish? Well, we'll publish it. We'll publish it. And I couldn't believe what was happening. He actually agreed to publish it. He didn't even see the manuscript. Everyone else had rejected it for whatever reason, and here he is accepting it. without even seeing it. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. I just flew back down to Prabhupada and told him the news. I was so excited. And Prabhupada it was like he was expecting it. Prabhupada just nodded.
We were in Columbus, Ohio, at that incredible time when Prabhupada led a kirtan at, I think it was University of Ohio, Columbus State, or whatever it was. And everybody was so ecstatic, they began dancing. But there was no place to dance because it was an auditorium. So they also were dancing on the handles of the art.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Behind his back.
And again, everyone worldwide. Here in New York, he did this himself. He couldn't believe what was happening. I mean, he actually agreed to publish it.
Find one. And Allen Ginsberg went to Srila Prabhupada and said, "Oh, Swamiji, I will give you my shoelace." And Prabhupada was very offended. You know, he did not want to take Allen Ginsberg's shoelace to hold a microphone. And Srila Prabhupada looked at Allen Ginsberg as though he were like 3 inches tall and not made of a very pleasant substance. And Len looked at me and said, "Nara Narayan, Vishwakarma, you must give me, sacrifice your sacred thread." Now, he had told me never to take off the sacred thread and showed me how to wear it and to put one on and without taking it off. So he's giving me a direct instruction to take off my sacred thread. I felt exalted, like Joan of Arc being asked to be burned at the stake. I said, "Sure." So I took off my sacred thread and handed it to Srila Prabhupada and said, "Thank you." Then he looked at a black look at Allen Ginsberg and put on the sacred thread with a microphone. Well, anyhow, the whole thing went fabulously, and Allen Ginsberg chanted, and Prabhupada chanted, and the thing was wild. It was just incredible. It was very exciting, and it gave a great boost to the beginning of the Columbus Temple. But after and before that time, Allen Ginsberg had flown in just for that purpose, and we had picked him up, and he was staying, I don't know if he was staying at the temple or not. I think he was staying in a hotel, but I don't know, maybe not. He might have been staying at the temple. But anyhow, I was designated to wash Allen Ginsberg's clothes at the laundromat. But he and Prabhupada were carrying on these great dialogues in a small room at the Columbus Temple. And there was room for a certain number of devotees there, and then there was not room for the rest. And sometimes I was in the room and sometimes I wasn't. But a bunch of us found out a way of monitoring the situation. In the next room over, there was a closet. And that closet communicated directly, so we drilled a hole through the wall in the closet. So there'd be like a dozen of us peering through a wall, a closet wall, at what was going on in the next room, trying not to cough or sneeze and revealing our whereabouts. So it was during one of those sessions that I heard Srila Prabhupada talking to Allen Ginsberg, and Ginsberg was talking about the nature of Kali Yuga. And Ginsberg was talking and saying, well, Swamiji, he used to call him Swamiji because that's the way he'd call in New York. And you know, Prabhupada and Ginsberg go way, way, way back. Ginsberg got him his first harmonium and arranged to help him get his temple. All these things he had aided. He was excited about Krishna consciousness. Although he never became a devotee, he was very enthusiastic about chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and used to hold kirtan all over the place on his own. So here we are peering through that hole in the wall of the closet in the Columbus temple, and Ginsberg is there saying, well, he said, in Kali Yuga is going on, and Prabhupada was describing how bad Kali Yuga was going to get, how there would cease to be any foliage at all. There would all be carnivorous animals, and people would also be cannibals, that the fruits would be there, but the seed would be big, and the fruit would be just like a skin. There would be nothing to eat. And the devotees would be, what few there were, would be living in caves. He was describing the end times, Krishna conscious version of the end times. And Allen Ginsberg was saying, he said, and your disciples, they will be in the caves? And Srila Prabhupada looked at him as though he'd lost his mind. He said, my disciples, he said, will have been back to God, will have gone back to Godhead by then. And Ginsberg was very impressed. He said, oh, really? He said, oh, yes. He said, they are very advanced. They are going to go back very shortly. They're chanting. They're taking part in this process. They're becoming pure devotees in this lifetime. They're going back to Godhead. And Ginsberg said, yes. And they said, what will happen to the rest of us? He said, Prabhupada leaned over to Ginsberg, and Ginsberg leaned over to Prabhupada, and they looked at each other face to face. And Ginsberg was straining to hear what Prabhupada was going to say, and Prabhupada said, Alan, in the end, I will eat you, and you will eat me. That is the end of Kali Yuga. Otherwise, you must go back to Godhead.
Prabhupada had a very fast wit. When people were talking in the beginning about him coming here with his immigration, Nandarani and Dayananda were thinking of sponsoring him. So he said, oh, you can adopt me, but they will say, what will you do with such an old child? And then Allen Ginsberg offered a woman to marry him. And he said, no, I cannot do that. So I saw his wit, and the people would say, oh, Swamiji, you look so nice today. And he says, just today? He would be like that, fast wit. And in the early time, there was more than one woman that asked him to marry him, not for immigration, but there's one person that followed him up to Montreal. It wasn't like people were getting kicked out of the temple too much for anything. You had to really do a lot to get kicked out of the temple. In the first days, we were having a rousing hour and a half kirtan and then going out and having a cigarette after it, like it was the theater or something, intermission, with the dogs there tied up in front of the temple because dogs wouldn't be allowed in the temple.
You know, when Prabhupada got his stroke, it was Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day weekend in New York, everyone leaves New York City. It's like this huge exodus. And I could see Prabhupada couldn't function, it was serious. So I called my family doctor, but he was out of town. And, you just get the answering service. I asked other devotees, anyone know any doctor? And nobody knew. And I was calling. I just took the phone book. I started making random calls. Whomever I called, everyone was out of town for the weekend. Everybody goes. At least in those days, I don't know now. And I mean, I'm just calling and calling, and it's hard enough to get anyone to come to a residence anyway. And I actually could not get any doctor. And, it was either bringing Prabhupada to a hospital. I didn't want to do that. And ultimately, I just got some kind of doctor's referral service, municipal thing. And eventually, I was able to get through them some doctor. And finally, a doctor came. And he was this little old, I guess maybe Jewish guy. And he comes in. Of course, we didn't ask him to take his shoes off, but I mean, there we're all standing in our we used to wear these jeans and t-shirts and barefoot. And he walks in, there's no furniture, just a carpet, and there's this old Indian man. He couldn't figure what's going on here. And there's Prabhupada very sick, and everyone's walking on, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He just couldn't understand. So it took him a time just to understand what's going on here, and then what to speak of examining Prabhupada. And he was a very kind of boisterous type of person, and he examines Prabhupada, and then, with the stethoscope, this, that. And afterwards he goes outside, and so we asked him, so what's wrong? He said, well, I think the old man, he prays too much. So, well, oh yeah, okay. So, he's just praying there, he's just sitting there praying all day, and he's got to get out, he's got to do some exercise. And Prabhupada could hear him from, the other room. Yep, he's got to do something. He's got to exercise. Go for a walk. Got to do something. Go out in the morning. Take a walk. Go to the park. So, anyway, and then he just left. And this guy, that's all he could say. So eventually we did have to I did put Prabhupada in the hospital. And then was a whole thing. And then Prabhupada came out of the hospital, then we took him to a house in New Jersey we had rented by the seashore. Anyway, then Prabhupada did recover sufficiently, and then Prabhupada announced that now I will take a morning walk. He said, that doctor, he said something very good, very valuable. We all laughed because we thought the guy was nut. And he said, Prabhupada said, no, he has given very good instruction. I will take that up. And Prabhupada then proceeded to take a morning walk, and Prabhupada always took that morning walk. No matter what his condition, what his health was, or whatever. I know stories of Prabhupada when Prabhupada was in Switzerland, and it was snowing out. He was in a hotel, Shamsundar took him to St. Moritz, that's the whole story. But Prabhupada couldn't go outside for his morning walk, so he took his morning walk in the corridors of the hotel, walking, just as if he was outside. He was just walking and walking. I know when there was an automobile accident we had in Mauritius, and we were all injured, even Prabhupada. The next morning, Prabhupada rang his bell. We were all
First from Gargamuni. What is the meaning of life, Swamiji? So Prabhupada says, the meaning of life is to be servant of God. So that took about 20 minutes, and this
Hare Krishna,
by a Swami.
Rest of the theater seats, not devotees, everybody. Srila Prabhupada looked at him as though he'd lost his mind. He said,
Service, municipal thing. A house in New Jersey, a hotel. Walking, just as if he was outside. He was just walking and walking. I mean, I know when there was an automobile accident we had in Mauritius, and we were all had been injured, even Prabhupada. The next morning, Prabhupada rang his bell. We were all aching and paining, and Prabhupada, he was injured even more, and on his leg and so on. He rang his bell. Where you going? Morning walk. And we were like hobbling, and but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. And Prabhupada was also he was much older than we were. Because, you feel, when there was a big tension like that, you feel the next day, all that adrenaline, it gives you a lot of pain. So, but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. So, Prabhupada followed that instruction.
it was a call-in talk show. The man had a reputation of not being so kind to guests. His name might have been Ron Owen, but that could have been a TV program. I arranged it. We went down there, myself, Jayananda, Mukunda, maybe Hayagriva. Since it was a call-in program, Gargamuni suggested, why don't we call in some questions? So we got the number, we poised at the phone, live talk show. Welcome Swamiji, welcome to the United States. A brief introduction. One of us gave a brief introduction about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, very brief. Call-in questions. First one, Gargamuni. What is the meaning of life, Swamiji? So Prabhupada says, The meaning of life is to be servant of God. So that took about 20 minutes, and this is like a call-in program. They want like sound bites and all this kind of stuff, although you didn't have the term sound bite then. But so then the next question is, why are we on the Earth planet, you know? So Prabhupada, again, a long answer. So now the man says, we want questions from somebody else besides your group. So they were obviously being screened by somebody in the engineering room, and the third question was a tremendous question, like, why are we here? What is our purpose for being here? Again, a great question. Prabhupada takes 15, 20 minutes. So now, for juxtaposition, for variety, the guy wants to get another point of view. So this woman from, sounds like a Midwest twang, calls in and says, Swamiji, why is your temple in the Haight-Ashbury? And Prabhupada says, the rents are inexpensive. So she says, why are you teaching hippies? And that might have been when Prabhupada said, they are not hippies, they're happies. It might have been at that time. She said, now how did you get here from India? And he said, I have received a free passage from my friend Sumati Morji on the Scindia line. So she said, who paid for it? And he said, well, free passage means there's no payment. So she was getting frustrated, and you could hear her. So she said, are you a freeloader? Prabhupada had never heard the word before, but he just said, yes. And we could hear her like fall down on her Formica kitchen floor. It sounded like she fainted, and the guy says, well, I don't like her questions anymore. I'm going to punch her out. So then he started asking questions about, like, what's that mark on your forehead and those kind of things, and then the program ended. But that was one program.
When I was making the Kartamashad murtis, casting them, and Govinda Dasi was painting them in 1969, I made 18 of them because that's how many temples we had at the time. And I said, well, Srila Prabhupada, my task is over. I've made as many deities as there are temples. I guess that's it. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, you must continue. I couldn't continue because the mold went out, and I couldn't make another casting. But I said, really? Well, who will we sell them to? I said, we won't. I said, if we sold them to karmis, they might put them out on their lawn as some sort of lawn furniture, lawn ornaments like flamingos or whatever. And Srila Prabhupada said, if one karmi buys one murti and puts it on his lawn, our whole movement will be a glorious success. And I thought, wow, that's a lot different than the general gist of what we've been pursuing. The idea that any contact with Krishna is a good contact with Krishna. And it was from that point on that he encouraged cottage industries and was saying that cottage industry is the way the people should do, because you keep your family together in the house instead of going everywhere. And he was very much against that. He was always talking about the commuter trains. They were going so fast that way simply so that later they can go so fast the other direction. And that the train only enables people to live so far away that they never see their family. People are meant to live in the same house with their family and work there. Not everybody works together. He said the grandmother works, the son works, the child works, the wife works. They all make something, like the paintings in Puri or Rajasthan. It's a group effort. And it's all done by people that know how to do one part. And they make these products and they sell it, and they stay together as a family and spend the rest of their time God conscious.
He had told me, at one time I was in Vrindavan, Achyutananda came. I don't know if this is appropriate for this, but he had gone to Prabhupada, and I was there, and he said, Gurudas should wear yellow robes. And we both looked at him, why? And Prabhupada said, Achyutananda said, because he is a householder, but he preaches like a sannyasi, and so he can wear yellow robes. And Prabhupada looked at him like, and I didn't care, and so that was shot down. So Achyutananda went on that well, Gurudas is in Vrindavan, but it would be really good if he could come preaching around India. There's many places. And I had done that somewhat. And I said to Prabhupada after Chudananda had gone, I don't care if I ever leave Vrindavan, I'm very happy here. I'd like to preach too, what should I do? He said, preach to devotees. He said, they need preaching. There's that same phenomena. Somebody joins, the courtship is over, and now you treat them like a married person, or whatever the analogy is. You grow complacent, that they're not unique and special. So I took that to heart, and I started preaching more. I think I was in charge of Vrindavan at the time, so I made it my business. It was great. Everybody appreciated it. I remembered in London when people came back from Sankirtan that Jamuna would make milk and I would tell them stories or read Krishna book. And everybody remembers that. They said it was like your father and she was mother. And Prabhupada, again, supported that by saying, men and women are in this very place. There's just on one floor difference and there's no mixing. That is because this is a family. It is not artificial here. You are like father and Jamuna is like mother. He said it is not artificial. So it's that family type of thing. And so I was preaching to devotees, and when I was to become sannyas, I pointed out that I thought that preaching to devotees would be diminished because of that. Not only because people treat you differently, and they did, but also a lot of married couples were coming for counseling. And that's my profession now. I'm a counselor. And even then, we were a good example. And so I was preaching to devotees. And so one of my first objections was that that would lessen that. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is so, but then you can preach more widely to the world, which is one of the ideas of becoming sannyasi.
So another interesting example of room conversation was later on in London in 1970. I'm sure there were many rooms in between and private conversations, but this one comes to mind. I had become, as a brahmachari, I was actually a householder, but living like a brahmachari, and living like that and chanting, you begin to wonder, am I going to get anywhere? I mean, certainly Prabhupada is proof positive that Krishna consciousness is not a fantasy, but a practical, normal condition of existence. I won't say human existence, but normal people are devotees. And there are more of them than there are us. We're weird trogdolites or something living somewhere else. But the real people are devotees, and they're happy, normal people that are perfectly fixed in the Atma Rama state of pure, unalloyed love of God. That's normal life. But what about me? Will I ever get there? So I was chanting my japa in the London temple, which was very small and very tall on Bury Place. And I just finished redecorating the whole place and fixing it up. And I was pacing back and forth in front of Srila Prabhupada's room, and I knew he was inside chanting japa. And I became overwhelmed by the urge to knock on the door and ask Prabhupada, am I going to make some progress? So I knocked on the door and regretted it immediately afterwards. I sat like in front of the door, worrying that Srila Prabhupada might answer or that he heard. And sure enough, he said, yes, come in. So I opened the door with trepidation, and I was even twice as scared as the first time I described. I came creeping into his room, and there he was, pacing up and down in this wonderful atmosphere that he created for himself with his japa bag in his hand. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He was a Leo, so he was just charging along, doing Hare Krishna. And I came in saying, oh no, I'm here, I've got to ask the question. So I shut the door behind me and crouched in a corner like a mouse. And Prabhupada looked at me and said, yes. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, said, I'm chanting, I'm following the program, etc. I said, I keep wondering, is it possible that I could ever become a pure devotee? I mean, I see that you're a pure devotee. Could I ever become a pure devotee? I mean, I'm doing these things, but could I become a pure devotee? And Srila Prabhupada looks at me appraisingly and marches back and forth the room a few times. And every time he turns, he mutters to himself, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And every time he turns around, he whirls around with his bead bag in the lead and says, Hare Krishna, and he charges across the room again. So he does that several times. I'm getting more and more nervous because I'm beginning to wonder about the answer. And then he looks at me and says, why not? He says, you're in the process. I'm sitting there just melting like into a puddle of ghee. I'm so happy. He chants a few times, and he comes to a corner, he goes, Hare Krishna. He comes around the room, and he looks at me with a gimlet eye and says, but it may take some time.
We're walking, just myself and Prabhupada. I had begun to go to the India Office Library. It was a great library in London. And also the British Museum. I had to pass to the British Museum Library. They had some old Gadyamat books, the British Museum, but India Office Library had everything. They had Bhakti Siddhanta. They had the poem that Prabhupada wrote to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati in 1934 or 36, Adori Dori, the holy day. I had found that in his handwriting and sent it to him, and he was so happy. So I was going through the library, and I had begun to read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings a lot, Puriyat, etc., and I really liked it because of the poetry and the imagery. It was very flowery, talk about compassionate. And in my heart, I liked Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings the best. I liked Prabhupada the best, but Prabhupada had a formal side to me and a public persona. When he was lecturing, he was apparently more stern. Not always. As far as the writing, it's very nice, but sometimes I found it to be sometimes repetitious. So in my heart, and I'm not reading this as blasphemy, I'm just being honest as a person, I like Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings the most. So I lied on the walk. I said, I like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is my second favorite author. Prabhupada looks over and he says, second? Again, at least I read that he read my mind. So I said, actually, he's my favorite. He said, yes. He said, if I was 1/10 the, and he sobbed, and I don't know the word, if I was 1/10 the of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I would be a great devotee.
Yeah, you see, all these different things, the different aspects of the movement, Prabhupada didn't specifically, order them, but he kind of, he guided us, but we had to find them out for ourselves. And it had to come from our enthusiasm and our realizations. He never made any demands. I mean, even everything, to begin with, like even initiations. He didn't say, all right, now I'm going to initiate you. No, we had to come to Prabhupada and ask, would you initiate us? He never said, now you wash my clothes. We had to come to Prabhupada, can I wash your clothes? So that's the way it was done. Can I learn how to cook prasadam? To make dal, and like that. So even like the Harinam, we would always. Even when Prabhupada was there, Prabhupada led every kirtan. He would play the drum, he would say the prayers, he would lead the kirtan. Nobody even dreamed of singing a kirtan himself. Prabhupada did it, the Swami did it. See? So when Prabhupada left to go to India, to Vrindavan after his stroke, So then we had to do ourselves. As a matter of fact, when Prabhupada left to go to San Francisco, he left to go and do the mantra rock dance. Mukunda arranged. In New York, all of a sudden, who's going to give the lecture? Prabhupada gave every lecture. Who's going to play the drum? And I mean, we were just standing around not knowing what to do. All right, why don't you try? Okay, and like this. And, okay, I'll give some Raymond said he'll give the lecture. And this, that. So we just started doing and then I wrote a letter to Prabhupada that we don't know. We miss you. And anyway, Prabhupada wrote back, oh, it's very nice that you are missing me. And if you like, he said, you can put my photograph on my sitting place. So, in Prabhupada's apartment where he would sit. So we didn't even have a photograph. Nobody had a camera. We didn't even wear watches. That was, that's where we were coming from. It was things. We didn't want things. So I had asked devotees in San Francisco to take a photograph of Prabhupada and send it to us. And then we had it blown up and framed, and we put it at Prabhupada's desk. So with the street chanting, Prabhupada would go on Sundays. He would take us to the park, and we would carry the rug, and Prabhupada would sit under a tree and have the kirtan. But it was Prabhupada having the kirtan. Nobody ever thought, we'll go ourselves. Because everything was done by Prabhupada. But then when Prabhupada wasn't there, but of course we all
What pills? I don't have one pill.
Huh?
I don't have one pill.
Yeah.
Hey, come see the peacock. Hey, guy, look the peacock.
What?
There may be some more. I'm going to go look, but people buy those too.